Gameplay Basics Part 1. Movement.
Movement in Devil's Run is defined by two things. Firstly, the movement modifier, which is part of the stat line of the vehicle, and then the roll of a D3 dice. So in the case of a car, its movement modifier is 2, and my D3 roll is 1. So in total, this car this turn can move up to 3 spaces, but has to move its minimum modifier of 2. So, for example, my car can move 1, 2, 3, or if it wishes to, you can move a car diagonally for 2 points. 1, 2, 3. That is the basic movement of a car. Now, a bike and a buggy and also a trike have a similar approach to movement as well. So in the case of a bike, they're faster, and also they have the skill called Maneuverable, which enables the player to roll 2 dice. In this case, I've got a 3 and a 1. I can choose which one of these 2 dice I wish to use. So I've got my movement modifier of 3, which I have to move, and then I can add to it another 3 or a 1. In this case, I choose to use a 3, so I move my bike up to 6 spaces. Again, I can move potentially diagonally for 2 or straight forward 6 or up to 6. That is the basic move action. Now, we have a number of other actions in the game of Devil's Run, one of which is called ramming. Now, ramming works in very much the same way. So for example, this car here may choose to declare he's going to ram the bike. When he does that, I've got my movement modifier of 2 and I've got my 1 die of D3. So I've got 2 plus 3, which is up to a 5. So I move my bike, 1, 2, 3, and when I get to this point, we stop because I've actually rammed the bike. Now a bike, as with any other vehicle, has the ability to evade, which is defined by its E value on its stat line. In the case of a bike, they're very manoeuvrable, they're able to evade and nip in and out of places. So on a D10, I have to get 6 or less. If it had been the car that had been rammed, I would have to get 2 or less on a D10, which is obviously a lot less likely to happen. So let's see whether my bike evades. It does not, so it's been hit. Now, when we define how the damage occurs, each vehicle, in the case of a ram, rolls a D3. So this is the car, it gets 2, and this is the bike, it gets 1. So the car gets 3 because it moved 3 spaces, so it gets a value of 3 plus its armour value, which is 1, becomes 4 in total, and then another 2 is 6. Whereas the bike has only got 1, which is its dice value, because it has no armour and it hasn't moved. So that means the bike is potentially going to take 5 points of damage, the difference between 6 and 1. So if this actually affects the bike to the extent that it should, the bike will be destroyed by that ram. Now, the bike has the ability to use an armour test. Now, this is a number between 1 and 5, and the player has to get below that number to use an armour test. In the case of bikes, it's a 1, so that means it's basically got to get a 1 to avoid any armour. Now, if I roll my dice, I get a 1, so I save 1 point of damage. Now I roll again, I get a 2, which isn't enough. If it had been the car, it would have been, or if it had even been the buggy, it would have been, but a 2 is not enough for a bike. So that means that my bike takes 1 point of damage, it saves, sorry, and then the second one gets through. So that means of the remaining 4, the first one has got through, and so do all others. I can't roll anymore once I've failed. So that means my bike loses 4 chassis points of damage, and therefore is on 1. It's not in a good way. Equally, another manoeuvre is ram, which works in ram on the brakes, which works in a very similar way. The car rams on the brakes, hits the vehicle behind it. Again, my bike has the opportunity to evade. Now, if I'm really lucky, this is going to be a 6 or less. It is. I have been really lucky with my dice roll in this demo. So, in this case, the bike is able to evade. So, the bike was in this position, the car goes into it. Normally the bike would be here and hit, but instead the bike can move to this location or this location. As it happens, I'm going to choose to put it here. the bike has evaded the hit, nothing more happens. Neither vehicle takes any damage. And that is very simply the mechanics of movement within the game. Now obviously in the more advanced rules there'll be more complicated rules like the ability to do a handbrake turn, to hit vehicles in a T-bone position. There'll also be the opportunity to do certain other things as the game progresses and the rules become more developed in the advanced format. But basically that is the movement, both the basic move action and also the offensive move special action.